Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Randall Krantz. I'm a senior advisor on decarbonization with the Global Maritime Forum. And on behalf of the Getting to Zero Coalition and its partners, the Global Maritime Forum, the Friends of Ocean Action, and the World Economic Forum, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar on ammonia as a shipping fuel. This webinar is part of a series that we're doing on a range of different fuels and technologies related to shipping decarbonization. This particular webinar is particularly exciting because we're not talking about ammonia as a shipping fuel in the abstract. We're going to be talking about ammonia as a shipping fuel in a very concrete example. And so today we have a series of partners who have joined together to create a demonstration project based on ammonia fuels. We have Mark Darley, Marine and Offshore Director from Lloyd's Register. We have Yang Chein, President and Group CEO of MISC. We've got Haeki Jang, Vice President, Hull Outfitting Engineering Team from Samsung Heavy Industries. And we've got Brian Østergaard Sørensen, Vice President, Head of Research and Development of Two-Stroke at MAN Energy Solutions. So welcome everyone, welcome especially to our speakers. And what I'd like to do is I'll turn to each of the speakers for just a few minutes to talk about why they're involved in this particular project and why ammonia is of interest to them and why they're putting this effort behind that. So Yi, I would like to start with you, please.
Thanks, Randall. Let me just start by saying why we are, as a ship owner, motivated to be part of this. And it comes from a point of reflection, which turns into a motivation. And it's reflecting on the history of shipping, right? As we all know, shipping or merchant vessel trading is one of the oldest industry in the world. And if you look at our evolution over the centuries, or even the past half a century, some of the major changes that has happened to us, whether the need to improve safety on board of vessels or the latest regulations when it comes to the environment, they were all somewhat dictated by others for us to follow, for us to comply. And sometimes, while the intention is good, may not be necessarily the right approach, or it makes sense financially, economically for us as ship owners. And especially now with the great energy transition, this is going to be a major shift for all of us. And if we, again, leave our future to random circumstances or random factors, and if we are reactive and we do not attempt to try and define how we're going to be part and remain relevant of this energy transition, I think it may be, the repercussions could be even far worse than the previous changes and regulations which we had to comply with. So we feel as a ship owner, we are in a position to work with partners with a common goal, ability to impact and influence, and hopefully contribute to the narrative of this energy transition and how we as ship owners can continue to thrive into the future. So that's really our motivation of why we're going to be part of this.
Thank you very much. It reminds me of an expression that I'd heard before, which was either be at the table or be on the table. And in this case, shipping should be at the table. What you're saying is very much having the agency and the proactiveness of defining its own future. And that's certainly something that I think everybody can agree with. Mark, from Lloyd's Register, over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Randall. Firstly, let me just say how happy I am to be at the table here today, sharing this with the partners and talking about this project to the wider industry through this platform today. As yourself and Mr. Yi have already said, look, these are really exciting times for us as an industry as we shape and embark on that evolution and on that fourth propulsion revolution. And most of us on this call and most of the partners, have seen where we've been in the transitions through our history, from wind to coal, from coal to oil, and now as we look forward to safely decarbonising maritime. Now, from a Lloyd's Register perspective, we see ourselves very much within that collaboration space as a trusted advisor. Of course, from our core business perspective, we're part of this partnership really to support the understanding in terms of the rules and regulation and the compliance and the risk assessments that are needed, as we embark on this new transition and new fuels. So of course, we'll be providing the guidance not only on the ammonia fuel systems, but also on the risk assessments of the ammonia fuel propulsion work as well, and helping the partners really validate some of the safety challenges and safety concerns that introducing a new fuel brings.
Thank you very much, Mark. And yes, you closed on the safety challenges. We'll have more questions about those later. It's certainly when one mentions ammonia, that's what comes top of mind to many people, and I think it's worth putting that front and center and exploring what is worth being concerned about and what is worth doing something about and addressing in a proactive way. Haeki from Sørensen Heavy Industries, as a shipbuilder, obviously you have a very specific role here. Why are you engaged in this project, and why are you interested in ammonia more broadly?
Okay, thank you, Randall. I'm Haeki Jang and head of Holafting engineering team in Sørensen Heavy Industries. Yes, personally, it's my honor to be a member of this meaningful development of ammonia-fueled vessel, which can turn the zero-emission technology into the real ship design. The main role of Samsung as a shipyard is to provide integration of the all engineering from the onboard ammonia storage tank and fuel supply system also, and to the ammonia burning engine, including all the safety features to make more practical and tangible outcome, so industry can see the whole ship design concept and performance as well. So all stakeholders can acknowledge this ammonia fuel application is feasible solution into real ship. That's the main objective of Samsung as a shipyard for this joint development program. Thank you.
Thank you, Haeki. And you mentioned two things that are interesting. One is the integration. There's a lot of different pieces that have to come together for this. What a company can do in its engine test lab is very different than what happens on board a ship. And then the other thing that you mentioned is the reality. I mean, ultimately, we can write reports about ammonia as a fuel, and many have been written, and those have been very welcome. But until we get a vessel on the water, until we start to understand this in real life, then there's a lot more to left to the imagination, and we want to break that down, understand it in such a way that we can really make things happen, move things forward, and understand how it's going to work in reality. So with that, I'd like to turn to our fourth speaker, Brian from MAN Energy Solutions.
So thank you very much, Randall. So from MAN's point of view, I think we echo a lot of the things that has already been said. I think when you look at the speaker panel here, it is clear that this is an industry-wide challenge, you can say. And we actually think that projects like this, when it comes to alternative fuels, they will actually help identify what type of swing factors do we have, and what challenges do we have to overcome to be able to actually go into the transition itself. Because I think there are many uncertainties out there. There are probably also looking at the diverse landscape of technologies and opinions. I think there is this lack of transparency, maybe holding back a little, what type of regulations do we need to have in place? What type of ship designs do we have to have in place? What type of infrastructure, not least, do we have to have in place to facilitate the transition? From MAN point of view, we believe we have something to contribute here on the technology side. From, you can say, my own area, then it's around propulsion concepts, making basically technology available for burning the different types of fuel. And we actually think that ammonia is interesting because it's relatively easy to handle. It's well known in the industry. It has, you can say, properties that we believe are suitable for an internal combustion engine. There are some challenges on the safety side. There could be something on the infrastructure side, But I think this is something that can be overcome when partners come together. So I think this, you can say, this is the right approach for actually introducing new types of fuel, for introducing new concepts and increasing the transparency on what needs to be done to facilitate the transition. And then I think, the transition itself, why alternative fuel? It's the right thing to do when I look ahead. And if we are not here, then someone else will make the decisions for us, I think.
Thank you very much, Brian. And I see that there's already questions coming into the chat that are relevant to you. Somebody's asking what technologies are available to burn ammonia as a fuel and their maturity level. So we'll certainly come back to that question, because I know that's one that everybody will be wondering on this call. What I'd like to do is I'll invite all the panelists to join me in the gallery, and we'll make our way through some of the questions that we've prepared ahead of time. As some of you have already figured out, please use the chat to ask additional questions. This is not a scripted press conference or anything else like that. We have prepared some questions that we think will be relevant and interesting to everybody, but pop your questions into the chat and we'll do our best to answer as many of those as possible. Also, we've got several colleagues who might be answering questions in the chat as well in parallel. Some of the questions might be either tangential and we might not have time to get to them, and some of them might be ones that just require a quick answer in the chat. So there may be some parallel conversations going on there. So please enjoy those and benefit from those, but let's keep the chat active and live, and it makes everything a little bit more exciting. So first question, which I'll take to all of you, is what can we expect to learn from this and other demonstration projects? I was mentioning earlier the criticality of demonstration projects to actually learn what happens in real life. Why are these first demonstration projects so critical? Maybe Mark, I'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just picking up what you said there, Randall, and also how Brian ended there in his introduction. As you say, demonstrations like this and collaboration across the industry in demonstrations like this is critical if we are to achieve the IMO 2050 targets. As an industry, we need to move away from words to action, and then from action to pilots and prototypes, and commercially viable deep sea vessels. Our research, both within this project and the LR research, shows that zero carbon vessels will be a reality and will be entering the fleet by 2030. So doing demonstrations like this clearly help us all understand not just the safety, but the operational challenges as we move through that transition. I think some other things as well to acknowledge, and we've seen in the past with demonstrators, whether that was the transition that we went through, with LNG. Clearly, demonstrators enable us as an industry to save money in the long term. The design screening processes that we go through as a demonstrator clearly then enable us to identify things early on that have the possibility to reduce significant costs when the project matures, and certainly when the project goes into the realization phase. I think from our perspective, from Lloyd's Register perspective, the learnings from such demonstrators are key in the creation of the rules, and Brian and a number of people have picked up on that as well previously. Prescriptive regulations will be needed for future fuels, including ammonia, from the design to the operation, from the fuel quality to the bunkering, from the training to the accommodation. There's lots of areas where we don't have prescriptive regulations in place that we do need to develop, and demonstrators like this help us to develop and make it easier for the industry then to adopt new technology and new fuels in the long term. I think the other thing to say as well, as we look to broaden out, is that it's highly likely, I think, that ships will be ready before a global landside infrastructure network is in place. And again, we've seen this situation with the rollout of LNG. And this time around, there are many more, I think, options to consider in terms of fuel options to consider. And what this demonstration does is, it points to the most viable solutions. not just from within maritime, but also in supporting the supply chain and the wider stakeholders that then have to fuel and support this industry and the ambitions within this industry.
Thanks, Mark. Brian, maybe over to you and your thoughts from an engine perspective.
Yeah, but I actually think, maybe it's very much along the lines that Mark said. You know, I think the demonstration projects like this is needed in order to make it more concrete. You know, so basically moving from idea to a real concept, to a concrete, you can say, design, like was mentioned by Samsung. I think this is needed to create a possible pathway for introducing ammonia as a fuel. So in such a project like this, you identify the challenges. You know, there might be challenges around the engine itself or combustion, but the ship design, what about, you can say, the whole safety aspects around that? and I actually think that going in 1 or 2 layers deeper into a ship design will actually help clarify that a lot. And that is why you can say a demonstration project like this is important. Create the transparency and the belief in that this is a viable option for one of the future fuels, you can say.
Thanks, Brian. You mentioned ship design. Maybe then over to you, Haeki, in terms of what we can expect to learn from a ship design perspective on this.
Yes, in order to make a realization of a big change, like from the liquid fuel to LNG and then alternate fuel, including ammonia, this kind of a big change, we need a maturity of technology first, and then, of course, economic justification and rule and regulation, and also finance and policy. And more importantly, stakeholders' experience and knowledge sharing to minimize the uncertainty. That's very important. So the first demonstration is very important to minimize this uncertainty, especially for technological side. And if stakeholders can participate, then we can draw practical and realistic alternative solution in many aspects. I think this JDP is quite different from the beginning. It really covers most of the stakeholder. We may say ecosystem approach from the supplier, fuel supplier, to the end user, owner and operator, in between engine, supplier, shipyard, and class. Thanks to this wide spectrum of JDP participants, this specific demonstration project can effectively identify key challenges, not only in just technical side, but also in other areas like regulatory framework and operational issues through this project work. So the outcome from this JDP will give more confidence to the market, for sure. Thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, you touched on a few things there that are critical. Certainly, the knowledge sharing and the minimizing uncertainty, and ultimately the end result of that is to give confidence to the market is definitely where we need to be. Some of that confidence would need to be with ship owners. Yi, what do you expect to learn from this demonstration project as a ship owner?
Well, Randall, I will give a fairly philosophical answer here, and I'm just going to quote what I know the first GNF summit in Hong Kong, the chairman Peter Stokes said, and these are the 2 words which resonated with me. He says that the global shipping industry, it's 2 words to describe it: confrontation, fragmentation. Let me repeat that: confrontation, fragmentation. And it's exactly why I said earlier why we are motivated to do this. And I think this project is a demonstration that we can come together, right, as different stakeholders in the ecosystem, and for a common goal, for a common aspirational goal. And the fact that this JDP has been assembled basically says that we can do it. We don't believe our partnership is the only one. We want others in the industry to form their own partnership. Let this be an example. We need plenty of such initiatives. There is no silver bullet. We need multiple parallel initiatives to sort of come together. Hopefully, collectively, we can really narrate and write a greener future for ourselves.
Thank you very much, Yi. We're getting a lot of good questions coming through. Some of those are on the technical side. So Brian, just to prepare you, I'm not sure if you've seen the ones that are coming through that are looking at the emission side of things. We'll come back to those in a bit, but just so you can get ready, I'm sure you've seen all those questions before, because certainly I've seen most of them. Before we do that, what I'd like to do is dive into the onboard storage and handling of ammonia and the safety issues. This is certainly something that comes up as a potential concern, but also as something where there's potential solutions. There's an industry that handles and transports ammonia. And so there are protocols out there that are for a different industry. What might that process look like? What are the implications? Mark, to you for as short as you can get as an answer on that, on a very complicated question.
Yeah, it's a very complicated question, and a question that comes up repeatedly as well, Randall. So I think it's good that we address that one. And to address that, firstly, I think it's important that we reflect on why ammonia has been identified as a candidate alternative fuel. Look, let's look at the facts. It's a no carbon fuel. It doesn't emit any CO2 when used as a fuel in an internal combustion engine. I know Brian's going to talk about that as well in a bit. We know, of course, that it has a very acceptable energy density. The energy density of ammonia is broadly similar to methanol, and it's higher than hydrogen, and that makes the onboard storage of ammonia pretty economically feasible and viable. As you say, we've been transporting ammonia within the industry now for a significant number of years. It's not cryogenic. It can be stored at temperatures of -33. So it requires less cooling than the likes of hydrogen, for example. And I think the economics, as well, as we've learned through this project, have got a long-term potential. And somebody mentioned in the chat about green ammonia, and whilst green ammonia at the moment, or ammonia produced from renewable energies at the moment, is currently costly, I think prices will fall substantially as production is scaled up and production supports maritime. So just some facts about ammonia there, but clearly ammonia also has its challenges. The most prevalent of those being that it is highly toxic and it's a corrosive and flammable gas. Although obviously it is slightly harder to ignite compared to other fuels. And again, I'll call out natural gas and hydrogen there. And obviously, in terms of the use of ammonia, the main safety hazard in using ammonia is the exposure to the human exposure through inhalation or skin contact. So through the various sort of workshops and hazards and HazOps and sessions that we've run as a project, the primary concerns on board and indeed preventing ammonia releases and the handling of leakages, if they were to happen, has been top of the agenda really when we've met from a technical perspective within this project. So there's a few things, as you can imagine, in the prevention side of things that we as a team are looking to address. So clearly gas detection systems can be used, but obviously defining the toxic safety level of ammonia is not straightforward. It's not like the gas detection systems that we have on board today, because it depends on both the concentration in air, but also the duration of exposure to any leakage. Engine safety requirements also require special consideration, with the assessment of the probability of leakage, as well as the mechanisms for purging, and I'm sure Brian might want to pick up on that. But also the release of the vapor during handling must also be controlled, and this means that structures need to be protected given the possibility, like we have with LNG, of embrittlement caused by low temperatures. I think the other two things as well, just that we've identified and are starting to address, are the environmental concerns, including the prevention of a gas release into the atmosphere, and the impact that would have both in the atmosphere but also into the sea. Combustion of ammonia may produce, for example, nitrous oxide, and that's much more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, obviously. And as a consequence of an ammonia-related accident, higher due to the toxicity than traditional fuels, I think it is likely that additional safety measures are and will need to be introduced in order to reduce that risk of exposure when we think about ship design, but also when we think about the operational measures that we need to put in place.
Thanks, Mark. And one question that came up in the chat that you might be able to answer was, you were mentioning the green ammonia versus other colors, shall we say. Is certification something that either this consortium is looking at or that LR is looking at more broadly? Because that might have a key role into kind of understanding where your fuel is coming from, especially in a transition phase when both will be out there.
Well, like I say, I think this prototype project and other projects that we're working in, really, as we work towards IMO 2050 and work towards supporting the industry as a whole, it's got to adopt that collaborative approach. So as an organization, we're looking right across the supply chain, from well to wake, effectively, or wind turbine to wake, however we want to call that. So, you know, separate to our core, shall I say, maritime classification business, we have a clean energy business as well that's looking at certification higher up the supply chain. So yeah, we as an organization are having conversations in that space as well, and that is them helping us to feed into this project and with these project partners as well as other projects. Great, thanks, Mark. Haeki, I'd like to turn to you some questions around you know, what are the implications for ship design and layout of bringing in an entire new fuel? There was a question in there about, you know, do we run pure ammonia? Is there a need for a pilot? My understanding is there is a need for a pilot, but we don't know quite how much yet. Clearly, that requires extra complications on the system that you'll be pulling together. Grateful if you could provide your thoughts on that.
Oh, yes. As Mark mentioned, ammonia is a toxic substance, and it should be treated with a high level of safety in the design, from the design concept, especially for venting design and also drain design must be dealt with very special care. And also material selection, because it is very corrosive, it's very important. And these major technical aspects will be deeply studied and verified through this JDP. But there is some positive side, because ammonia has been used as a refrigerant already, and also as a cargo in LPG carrier or ammonia carrier, and catalytic reduction media in a selective catalytic reactor already for NOx reduction technology in the shipping industry already. So there are, of course, we need some new regulation and also rule development, but it can be extended and a little bit fortified from the existing rule. And our JDP partner, LLoyd Register, will be leading this main role. So based on the rule development progress from the LLoyd, the shipyard, Sørensen can do ship design, and tank layout and operational consideration also will be continuously updated and developed according to the progress of rule development. And I think there are many, already many technologies and also design concept in the market already. So we can just need to find how to organize and apply and use these available resources in a proper way to design safely and practically for this JDP. Through this JDP period, we will do our best for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Haeki. And maybe a quick reflection on options for ammonia bunkering, if you can give me a 30-second answer to that. What are the implications for bunkering as it relates to fueling ships for ammonia?
For ammonia bunkering, typically there are three options we may see. So one is from tank lorry, and the other is from terminal, and also from bunkering ship. So considering the quantity of the fuel required for normal ocean-going vessel, bunkering from tank lorry cannot be a proper solution because it needs plenty of time to complete the bunkering. So in case of bunkering at an existing terminal, I think the accessibility of large cargo ship could be very limited because it is most probably far from the normal operating route for cargo ships. Then as proven for LNG fuel bunkering, using the bunkering ship looks most feasible option for ammonia bunkering as well. So from the technological and also operational aspect, loading and unloading ammonia as a commodity at the terminal is very similar to bunkering ammonia as a fuel. So the difference is the ammonia is transferred to the fuel tank installed in the ship. So in case of both bunkering ship and ammonia fueled ship have pressurized tank, we have to consider how to safely return the vapor generated in the fuel tank during bunkering operation. And if bunkering ship has semi-refrigerated tanks, and excuse me, but a ship has a pressurized tank, or opposite case, it is required to control the temperature and pressure of the pressurized tank. The vapor from the ship has to be returned to the bunkering ship and pressure to be controlled by using a reliquefaction plant to meet the pressure of the bunkering ship storage tank. This is the options, I think, and technical and operational implication we can consider for ammonia bunkering at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Haeki, for some of those technical insights into the challenges associated with ammonia bunkering. Brian, over to you. A few questions have been coming in, so we'll see how much we can kind of squeeze in here. But one of those was just around the reference to pollutants, which Mark touched on. I'd love to get your take on that, because that's something that you guys are already playing with and may have some insights. And then there was another question on the engine types. And maybe if you could comment on those, and then we'll talk about kind of timelines and technical expansion beyond this pilot.
Yeah, so so you can say, in addition to focus on safety, which of course is paramount when dealing with ammonia, we are also looking at the emission side, and basically our philosophy would be not to generate the N2O, you can say, from the combustion process. I think Mark mentioned that it's quite a potent greenhouse gas, and we do not want to end up with a worse greenhouse gas footprint than burning fossil fuel, you can say. So our first intention is not to generate it during the combustion process. If it's being generated, then we need to look at exhaust after treatment and how that could be done. It has been done on shore side. You can say they are dealing with N2O. It requires quite high temperatures and higher temperatures than what we are seeing today. So of course that is part of the engine development. So we look at it from a solutions point of view. So how can we make a safe and efficient, you can say, solution that does not emit strong greenhouse gases like N2O? So our idea is to control the combustion process to limit it, to limit the emission.
Thank you very much. And then in terms of the timeline, so the expected outcomes of this demonstration projects, what next? What does the timeline look like? So what does the timeline look like for this demonstration project? I think we had a question on that specifically. And then what is the next step? How do we go from this demonstration into broader commercially viable solutions? And I know that you guys have a timeline for that, and I think people are curious.
When I look at it from an engine development point of view, and talking MAN, we will have the commercial engine available in 24. So we'll be able to deliver, you can say, ammonia burning engines in 24. That is sort of the development timeline we have set, and we are actually on track to deliver that. You can say if I go into the details, I think there was one question also around material selections and so on, and we have done material screening, and we do not need special coatings for the engines and so on. What we have identified is that we need new types of packing materials, for example, that can withstand ammonia. So it is very much into the details of the engine design. So where do we need to upgrade it to be able to cater for the ammonia? And the same, we'll be looking at pilot fuel consumption and pilot injection timing and so on, because ammonia is not great, does not have great combustion characteristics. So how would we deal with that? Again, controlling the combustion process to limit emissions. So that is the focus at this point in time. So I think the project is developing according to the plans laid out, and we're actually quite confident that we will be able to meet the timeline of 24.
Great, thank you, Brian. And of course, one of the key elements to this timeline, to come back to you, Yi, is the demand side of things. And so one of those is kind of the demand from ship owners, but also there was a question listed in the chat about kind of demand to ship owners as well. So how do those two pieces interrelate, and what does that mean for taking things for ammonia beyond scaling, beyond the demonstration and into the scaling phase?
Well, obviously in the scaling phase, I think we have to look at making it economically feasible for ship owners, which means cheap enough. That's for sure. Second thing is rapid deployment. So it could even mean the ability to retrofit vessels using ammonia. I think if we can really solve that, it's not just building a green ship through new buildings, but also giving hope to a lot of older vessels running on different fuels. And I think this would also help really address the risk of stranded assets, which I think is a major topic, right, out of this whole transition. And obviously, I would say the elephant in the room here would be, would we, as a ship owner in this partnership, spend the money to build the ship? The answer is yes, we will. Just like we took the decision to also commit to building LNG dual fuel vessel, to at least try to move the curve when it comes to emission reduction. We would do the same as well for the first ammonia vessel. So the day when the engine is ready, HHI, Samsung ready to build it, and Yara says it's good to go, 2025. So that's going to be the big day for us as a ship owner to put the money to work.
Excellent, thank you. On that, we're getting quickly through our time that we've allotted. Yi, you have now a special announcement to make. So I'd like to hand the floor over to you to do just that.
Thanks, Randall. I think this is also very timely as well, because a lot of the questions that we're seeing is on green ammonia, accessibility to green ammonia. There are a lot of questions from the viewers on regulations, safety standards, handling of bunker. So I'm very happy to announce that our coalition of 4 partners will become a coalition of 6 partners with the addition of 2 new partners to this JDP. And I'm very, very pleased to announce that Yara International, one of the world's leading fertilizer ammonia producer, is joining us, and they will bring with them the expertise on the handling of ammonia, its property, and we believe it will be a major input to our project. And I'm also very, very happy to announce that the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore has also joined us, and they will bring such a wealth of influence and experience in how do we define the SOP, the standards in terms of safe bunkering. I'm sure you guys know in Singapore, they have written the standards for LNG bunkering. There's a lot of lessons learned from that, which we could now feed into the handling of ammonia as bunker fuel. And to commemorate the growth of this partnership from 4 to 6, I'm very happy to announce that we are also going to name this JDP. If I can get someone to pull up on the screen, we are calling our partnership the Castor Initiative. So instead of just the JDP for ammonia as fuel, our initiative, our collaboration will be called the Castor Initiative.
And maybe you could tell us why it's called the Castor Initiative.
Well, we've consulted among the 6 partners, and for all you stargazers out there, so Castor is a system of stars, right? And to the naked eye, if you look up into the sky, it's actually just one of the brightest objects you can see in the sky. But actually, Castor is actually a collection of 6 stars. So by coincidence, 6. We believe we now have the necessary key stakeholders in the ecosystem to be able to address all the various challenges and questions that everyone has asked. We don't have all the answers, but with all the 6 partners together, we believe the next 2 or 3 years, we can take all the questions down one by one and answer them. And we try and converge towards a solution that makes sense, a solution that is scalable, and a solution that is feasible for everyone. And lastly, obviously, in the old days when you navigate, when there's no satellite or there's no radar, right? What do? You look to the sky, look to the stars. Well, hopefully the Castor Initiative will be one of the stars which would lead us towards a greener future.
Thank you, Yi. With that, I'd like to invite Rob Stevens from Yara to join us. Rob, I think you're hopefully there and you'll be able to get your camera on and provide your insights. And I really like the name Castor Initiative. The great thing about constellations is they take 6 stars or as many stars as they need, and they make something greater than any one of those stars. I mean, so we have 6 shining stars with us today, and what we're building is something much beyond, and even beyond this initiative, it's really a pathway forward. So Olga, we can drop that slide, and Rob, over to you to tell us a little bit about why Yara's joined the Castor Initiative and to understand what you're looking to get out of this collaboration.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Yi and the partners for inviting Yara to make indeed the Castor star constellation even brighter. And as such, of course, that Yara is evaluated because we recognize indeed that only collaboration can bring us forward. And in our specific case, it's indeed as we are positioned in ammonia that we see that in the energy transition, ammonia can be the enabler in the energy transition, and especially also towards zero emission shipping. So as such, if we then look wind a bit back to the history of Yara, Yara's mission is responsibly feed the world and protect the planet. And as such, historically, we started in 1905 already by producing renewable hydroelectric power-based fertilizer, which we have been doing through the renewable ammonia route until 1993. So also the production of green ammonia is something that has been proven in the past, but in the end was outcompeted by natural gas-based ammonia production. So the steps now in energy transition is that we get that competitive advantage of renewable and clean ammonia back again. In our drive also to be climate neutral by 2050, Yara took some measures already in the past, and dinitrogen oxide, laughing gas, is mentioned in the discussions of the ammonia's marine fuel as well. We developed our own catalyst in our nitric acid plants and managed to halve our greenhouse gas emissions from our production. So technology development for sure will deal in, the same on engines in case emissions would happen. In further focus to protect the planet, we established earlier this month, beginning of February, the Clean Ammonia Unit, a standalone business unit in Yara, where we combined our ammonia trading, shipping, and our climate neutrality efforts towards ammonia, the hydrogen economy, and the energy transition enabler. And as such, hopefully fast tracking towards climate neutrality. And apart from ammonia being a feedstock for crop nutrition, ammonia is also the energy carrier. And this project specifically, we as the largest ammonia producer believe that ammonia can play a major role in zero emission shipping. So as such, joining the Castor Initiative is that we think we can contribute to the consortium with our competency on safe and reliable ammonia production, as well as our safe handling of ammonia, being the world's largest distributor and logistic operator of ammonia. So as such, this partnership will bring all the pieces of the puzzle together to enlighten this bright star.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. And it's great that Yara thought ahead 100 years and put a ship, a vessel in its logo. So that was definitely thinking ahead. We've had a few more questions come through. We've got less than 15 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is just kind of dive straight back in on the content now with a 5-person panel, which is very exciting. One of the questions that came up from Sophia was around the implications of accidents and spills and how these are currently handled in ammonia cargo operations. And maybe, Rob, you'll be able to kick that one off, and others, LR could hop in on that as well.
I don't have the statistics of spills from our ammonia operations available, but having been responsible for ammonia production and therefore also the dialogue with ammonia trading shipping on the loading, I have not been involved in any incident related to an ammonia spill from the operations I've been responsible for.
So not a common thing to happen. If it did happen, Mark, has LLoyd done any evaluation of that? So what are the implications there on the accidents or spills, and whether you've thought of kind of grounding or collisions and what the implications there might be?
So I think it's similar to Rob, to be honest. You know, prevention is obviously better than cure in this, and that's why we're going through with the team such in-depth risk assessments and hazard and HAZOP studies. You know, there are a range of measures, as I've outlined, available to us that we've used in different hazardous environments or situations. And these are, let me just be clear, these are not just from within maritime. You know, we've had to and do look broader than that in terms of, certainly from an operational perspective and an environmental and pollution perspective, the impacts of introducing a new fuel into maritime. But of course, you know, the standard approach in terms of prevent, detect, and safely control is very much how maritime and regulation then would address this. You know, for example, having effective detection and fuel cutoff systems that help to protect and isolate individuals from toxic exposure. These are some of the things that we're looking at. But I think it's also worth sort of reflecting here on this project, as well as the development of ammonia or indeed future fuels as a whole into the maritime space. I think, you know, the ship type and safety will play a key role in the introduction of any fuel. You know, for example, when we talk about ammonia, I think we're talking about, you know, a cargo ship manned by a small number of highly trained crew will likely be one of the early vessels. And, you know, you would do that rather than conversely looking to turn a cruise ship carrying thousands of passengers, which of course has a bigger challenge in terms of technology adoption. So that's generally been our approach here, Randall.
Great, thank you very much, Mark. One other question that's come up a couple of times in the chat, and I'm not sure whether anybody on this panel can answer, but I'm going to try it anyway, just to see. The question was about fuel cells in ammonia. And Brian, that's not what you guys do, but it must be something that happens on the sidelines. Do you see that fuel cells will play a role? Not necessarily one that you're driving, or maybe it is one that you are exploring.
No, I think for sure a lot of, you can say, research and development is going into different types of fuel cells. And we are also looking at this, you can say, on the side without being our primary focus. I think you can say, I think in the some future, I think the fuel cells will play a role. I think they are becoming cheaper and more efficient. I think we have a strong product in the internal combustion engine, so the efficiency of that one is quite high. I think the fuel cell have the potential to have a higher efficiency over time. So for sure it's something we follow, and we follow it closely. But I think here and now and in the foreseeable future, we believe that the internal combustion engine is a reliable and well-proven technology, you can say, So at least that will play a major part in the transition.
Great, thank you, Brian. I've got time for 2 more questions. So one of them is going to be about staff certification, operations and handling, because that's come up a couple of times. And then the other one, I want to come back around kind of government interventions and what governments and regulators can do to help us overcome this challenge. And maybe I'll use that as my last question to do a tour de table, so to speak. So if you all have a think about that. And maybe Yi, I'd like to come to you first on the training. You have your seafarers, and obviously they will need to be trained up for this demonstration, but also more broadly for the future. What do you see as the role of training, certification, and then operations and handling, and everything that comes around that for your crews?
Well, I think basically we believe in the concept of what we call the universal seafarer, which means capable of handling all kinds of engines and even sailing on all kinds of vessels. And obviously we have a maritime academy in Malaysia, and we can, through the curriculum, when they're just cadets, we could start introducing some of this frontier curriculum to start teaching them, and the seafarers who are really out there, and bring them back in when on shore leave to try and train them. Obviously, what we're learning from this project would all become important feedstock into how we design the, shall we say, the re-education or education of our seafarers going forward. So it's not just the ship side that is ready by 2025. We're going to make sure that the human element side is also ready as well, in running a ship as well as in bunkering safely.
Yeah. And Rob, you obviously have vessels that transport ammonia, and you have crews that therefore are dealing with the bunkering. Obviously, it's different than having it as a fuel, but how do you see that transition? Is it an extension of the current processes and practices you have in place, with maybe some standards and certifications that will come in place for this as a fuel as opposed to as a cargo?
It's as was indicated, the bunkering would not be significantly different from the cargo transfer. It's different volumes, but the connections will be the same. Ship-to-ship cargo transfer also is happening, so that means that ship-to-ship bunkering is a potential as well. Then linked to the education of the crew is indeed, as Ms. Yi indicates, it's expanding the reach to new crews to train them, and onshore training protocols exist specifically on ammonia and safe handling, safe loading, and the crew on ammonia carriers they have their knowledge as well, and this combined will bring us to ammonia as shipping fuel.
Great, thanks. And Mark, maybe last word on the training side of things from LR.
Yeah, I think Yi and Rob summed it up nicely there. To be honest, certainly Mr. Yi knows very, very well the training requirements, and through his academy, we'll be supporting, make sure that we get trained people on board this ship. And from this project perspective, it's about, through the hazard process, as I say, identifying the risks that we might be putting people in front of and mitigating those risks in a safe manner.
Excellent, thank you. So this brings us to our final question. I'll invite each of you to answer this. Haeki, I'll start with you. You collectively, the Castor Initiative, is doing a lot in stepping forward, and this is not at the behest of any government. As you said in your introduction, this is something where the industry is taking agency, but still we've heard about higher costs and other stumbling blocks that we must overcome. What is the role of government to overcome these? What are the interventions that we need to take this beyond a single demonstration and to take ammonia to a greater scale?
We need to have a realistic technical solution first, and of course adequate infrastructure also, and solid regulation and practice, so it can support the journey to decarbonization. And the clear direction and guideline is very crucial to make all stakeholders in maritime industry so confident going toward this decarbonization. I think the leadership of the IMO and also the collaboration of the participant in this kind of demonstration project can also give good the signal toward the decarbonization. Of course, the open discussion like what we are doing at the moment can draw more public attention to decarbonization. So I think the activities of the global organization like Goal to Zero Coalition, supported by Global Maritime Forum and World Economic Forum and Friends of Ocean Action, this is quite crucial to change the perception toward the decarbonization. Just we can do some more promoting like forum and providing in-depth more knowledge and insight. This my thought.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you, Haeki. Brian, quick answer from you on what would you love to have from governments, from regulators, if you could wave your magic wand?
I think we would like a global set of rules and standards. I think you can say having sort of a common framework to work from, meaning that we know what to design up against, you can say. I think for shipping that is quite important. So a global set of rules that can be applied to engine designs and vessel designs and operation. I think that would be our probably very high on our wish list.
Great, a global set of rules. Rob, to you.
I think first of all, it's indeed a collaboration, the Castor Initiative, that we demonstrate a safe way of having the first ship in the sea, because proof will convince others to indicate, okay, it's a safe solution. On safety, I think we learn from each other and can bring that forward with high standards. But then the most important thing is the dialogues IRO that ammonia is less energy dense than conventional fuels, hence the costs are different. And if we then move ammonia from conventional ammonia to renewable ammonia to clean ammonia, the cost will even further increase. So assistance in order to facilitate the first movers in clean ammonia production, to bring it at scale faster, that the learning curve comes down faster, and therefore ammonia as a fuel becomes cheaper on a fast track. That first help by authorities is needed.
Great, thanks. So first movers assistance to help with that large current cost differentiation, to bring that down and close that gap. Mark, to you.
Yes, obviously the team have spoken a lot about the rules and the regulatory certainty that's needed. Clearly one of the biggest challenges as we move down this journey. But let's just remember that shipping is a true global industry. It crosses territories, it crosses governments, and of course governments have different agendas around the world. And I think it's great that the MPA, as one of the major flags, has joined the Castor Initiative and is supporting us on the regulatory side of things. But equally, I think if I had a magic wand, we need to get a bit more economic certainty and support in terms of the commercial impact and analysis that transporting ammonia and using ammonia in future fuels will have around the world.
Great, thank you, Mark. And final word, Yi, to you. Waving your wand, what do we get from governments to make this happen and scale?
I think just building off what everyone is saying. Well, I think the MPA of Singapore being part of this initiative is so important, because they will help at least write the regulations, the procedures that could prove, together with everybody else as in this initiative, that an ammonia fuel vessel can be operated safely. It is technically and operationally possible, and most importantly, financially viable. I think that's very, very important. So what we can do, what we can produce in the Castor Initiative is to show that we can have a vessel, man and machine, operating safely using ammonia as fuel. But ultimately, the biggest voice coming from this initiative is that we will then co-op other parts of the ecosystem, like the financiers, the banks, the customers, to join hands with us. Under the Global Maritime Forum, you've got the Poseidon Principles that have come out from last year. You've got the Sea Cargo Charter. Do not forget all those initiatives. Like I said, we are not the only, we take a collection of initiatives to come together. I think we need to take a step back and look at, everyone has got a part to play. The 6 partners are doing our little part, and hopefully it will morph into something a lot bigger and there'll be a convergence whereby we can make things work for everybody.
Excellent. I want to thank all of my panelists, Mark Darley from Lloyd's Register, Yang Chein from MISC, Haeki Jang from SHI, Brian Sørensen from MAN, and Rob Stevens from Yara. I want to thank the audience for joining us for this interesting conversation. And I want to congratulate you on the launch of the Castor Initiative, the formal launch of the Castor Initiative and its new baptization. This is very exciting. We look forward to updated news on how this progresses and continued conversations on how it gets to scale. Thanks to everybody who put their questions in the chat. We didn't obviously get to all of them. Some of them will even be picking up on future panel discussions as we move forward. So thanks again to everyone. 1 minute over, not bad. Thanks again and be well.